Welcome everyone, I'm Archit Seshadri. Thanks so much for watching WION World is One News. You're watching the special broadcast on WION, the only Indian channel that gets you a global perspective. Tonight at 7, we discuss the terror attack at a concert in Manchester. It serves as a grim reminder of how potent the Islamic State threat could be. But our first story tonight, closer to home in India, there is a much more different type of threat that is looming. Already staring at a water crisis every single year on a year-to-year basis. A new report says that India's underground water tables are disappearing and disappearing fast. Here's the report.
It's a crisis of epic proportions that is waiting to happen across India. And there isn't much time left to avert it. India's groundwater is depleting, and depleting fast. For a country that is heavily dependent on groundwater resources, this could be really bad news. Here are some facts. Bengaluru and Chennai are facing severe water scarcity, such that it's reached crisis levels. With erratic monsoons, agrarian India reaches out to groundwater for cultivation purposes. Less rains, more drawing of groundwater, and no replenishment. In fact, 48% of rainwater flows into the ocean. Indiscriminate use of groundwater means India can run out of usable water in a few years from now. One of the steps that can be undertaken is water harvesting. But with virtually no awareness, rainwater often goes waste. Take the example of New Delhi. The city receives a mind-boggling 690 billion litres of rainfall every year. But since no water harvesting happens, most of this goes waste. Should Delhi harvest even 25% of this water, this could yield 172 billion litres, sufficient to tide over a summer month. India uses up more groundwater than the US and China. And with per capita use of water set to double by 2050, the crisis could hit India sooner than later. Bureau Report, WION.
To get perspective on this story, the depleting groundwater in India, we have Vimalendu Jha, a water conservationist, as well as Sushmita Sen Gupta, the program manager for CSE. Thank you both for joining us tonight on the discussion. First of all, most Indian cities are dealing with this. They don't supply water around the clock, and it seems like a growing problem. But what needs to be done to fix this? We'll start first with Vimalendu Jha.
Yeah, so I think, what we are actually seeing, this statistics, this report that you're actually talking about, the same report also came by the European Union in 2016, which said that India and Pakistan, both these countries, actually, their per capita consumption of groundwater or overall groundwater consumption is much, much more than US and China combined. And primarily, we are actually talking about this is centuries of mismanagement that has actually happened. We talk about institutional incompetence because our political class is not able to understand that there is a crisis of this magnitude which will have an economic impact, which is already having a social impact. There are farmer suicides that's actually taking place, and all of it is also connected to food security in some way or the other. And by the way, the main reason, the main cause of groundwater depletion is actually the food production. So the nexus between food production, which is therefore irrigation, and groundwater is something that one needs to understand. Imagine that in just last year, I think there was a standing committee on groundwater that said that there needs to be a database of groundwater availability in our country. And it's been over a year now, and there's no database that we actually have. So we as a country don't even know how much groundwater do we actually have, what are the areas that are actually under distress. And interestingly, there are two parts of this. One is the quantity of water that we're talking about, and the other is quality of water. By the way, almost 60 to 65% of groundwater in our country is contaminated. So one is depletion and the other is contamination, and that is leaving our country, our metros, our cities, our villages completely dry. And it's not just an agrarian crisis, it's a crisis of potable water, it's a crisis of water. What India is going to be really in a disastrous situation in the next decade or two.
All right, let's continue the conversation. Let's go next to Sushmita Sen Gupta, Let me ask you a question, Sushmita, with regard to that, Bengaluru, Chennai, many of these cities, especially in the southern part of India, dealing with the water problem, not just for the last few years, but for the last several years, in fact, really putting a strain on the system. Of course, the farmers, the drought situation not helping with that. I mean, what went wrong? I mean, what really is the blaming point with regards to all of this, and how did it get to such a big problem, literally, growing year by year?
Actually, what happens is groundwater is depleting because the cities have become water guzzlers. They are extracting, there is no proper ban in the cities. Legally and illegally, people are withdrawing the groundwater without any plan of replenishing it. If you take the cities like whether it's Delhi, whether it's Gurgaon, whether it's Bangalore, or whether it's Chennai, no one has a city level rainwater harvesting plan to replenish the groundwater. Chennai, if you see, they are taking water from far and far away from the city, as well as withdrawing the groundwater. As a result, the quality of the groundwater is also deteriorating. Over and above that, we have the lakes actually, which are actually encroached, cemented, unplanned urbanization is happening. As a result, the natural recharge, because it's all cemented off, the natural recharge in the areas are also diminishing. So we need, because we do not have an area-wide aquifer recharge plan in place, we are actually losing this groundwater, because groundwater is like a bank. If you have 100 rupees, you can only withdraw 100 rupees from it. So there should be a plan to replenish it. So we are losing our water bodies, which are big recharge points. We are going for unplanned urbanization, and over and above that, there is rains are diminishing. We cannot actually deny that. So we need a plan at war footage to recharge our groundwater.
All right, let me go to Kamalindu with regards to the situation on modern technology. I mean, is there something that these cities, parts of India, could perhaps learn or adapt to improve the situation for the generations to come? I mean, where are we headed with this? I mean, how is this problem going to be solved?
Okay, so we need to understand that there are cities and there are villages, and when we talk about groundwater extraction or depletion or groundwater crisis, primarily it is a rural problem, because we are actually talking about a country like India, where Indian law says that the landowner has exclusive rights over groundwater, and that's the reason why if you go to the countryside, you'll see tube wells and bore wells which are actually irrigating our rice, our wheat, and everything else. So that's the main problem, not necessarily the city. Cities are not necessarily extracting all their drinking water, not all the cities, in many cities indeed. Now, of course, from a technology point of view, there's partial mitigation that needs to happen. So when we talk about modernizing technology within agriculture, we need to look at drip irrigation. We need to look at the way we actually irrigate our areas. We need to look at the way we build our check dams. So there's no policy that we have. Therefore, there needs to be check dams that needs to be built around rivers, around floodplains, around different water bodies, so that could be used. So some of it is modern technology and some of it is old technology, the traditional wisdom that India has had to conserve water. Within cities, of course, rainwater harvesting is something that is, it's common sense rather than technology, I would say, to really save water. So it's somewhere the policy has to be made.
Right.
Citizens to understand that the urgency of something like this. By the way, Gurgaon that we are talking about, Gurgaon is in dark zone, which means that the groundwater table is almost at 34 meters, and it's depleting at the rate of almost 1 meter to 4 meter every year. And that's the national average, by the way, almost 1 meter water table going down in different parts of our country. So it's a deep, dark crisis which needs to be done by the government and also by the citizenry, because we only have two sources of water. We have surface water and we have groundwater. Surface water, we've seen the lakes, the frothing, foaming lakes of Bengaluru, the frothing river of Yamuna in Delhi, the polluted rivers of several parts of the country, and a contaminated groundwater regime of our nation at the same time.
Let me ask Sushmita next question about, what perhaps India could learn from its Western counterparts in terms of perhaps making sure that the water doesn't run out. Are there things that individually, what are some things that people could do at home? People who are watching, people like you and me, what are things that they can do to improve and, do their part for the bigger population for India? And second of all, the government and those in power, what can they learn perhaps from other countries to solve this water problem?
I would say that India has a very old tradition of conserving water. So India, the knowledge is with the country. So we need to actually revive that knowledge. We have lots of knowledge ourselves. Because if you see the history, when Britishers came to India, they were surprised to see that Western deserts actually only receive 500 millimeter of rainfall in a year, but still they could harvest the water and survive throughout the year. So they called our society the hydraulic society. So we have the knowledge ourselves. For the rural areas as well as urban areas, what is happening in rural areas, we have different types of programs which have been launched across years, whether it's for the drought-prone areas, whether it's under Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Schemes. There are different integrated watershed programs launched, and crores of money has been pumped in. But because there is no good planning in place, so we are not getting the impact. So we have the knowledge in place, we have different policies, but only thing, the planning and the implementation part is not that strong. So we are facing this problem actually.
All right, let me go to India. What about the population? Is that also a factor? Certainly the population of India, huge, growing, not really a whole lot being done to address that or limiting it. And certainly the more people you have, the more water they need. I mean, what extent or what role does the population go hand in hand with the water crisis?
Of course, the population, as in India, is almost 1.7 billion. It's going to be 1.7 billion by 2050. And also when we talk about the new India, we're talking about a mushrooming middle-class India, which also means that mushrooming middle-class India needs more protein-rich diet, which means that it requires significantly more water to produce. So we at the end of the day, in a country which is almost over a billion, which is going to hit 1.7 billion by 2050, the middle class is growing at the same time, and the food production is also increasing. And at the same time, the export of food that we have, as India is one of the biggest food exporters, and that therefore we are actually exporting our groundwater to different parts of the world. So population, yes, is responsible, but that's the given that we have, that we are a big country. Now, with the given of being a big country, what do we need to do at the central level, at the state level, and at a municipal level, or at a panchayat level? And that is what is missing. At the end of the day, we as a country, both at the government level or at a civil society level, we don't have a roadmap because we do not really think it's a big problem. And it is a big problem. As I have told you, and I'm sorry I'm repeating myself, most of our water, almost 70% of India's water is non-potable, which means that it's already polluted. By the way, groundwater contamination means it's irreversible. It can never be fixed ever. And then we're talking about a drought-like situation. We're talking about a farm crisis. We're talking about a subsidized electricity. So it's not so simple to fix this problem because it's actually linked to our agricultural policy making also, because when you give free electricity, when you give freedom to people to really produce and use bore wells in the countryside, you will have a depleting groundwater table. And when you do not have a mandatory law to to harvest your rainwater in cities, then you will have a problem like this.
All right, and that does this discussion for our South Asia focus. Real quick, before we wrap it up with our guests, let me ask our final segment. We always sum it up with 3 words, Vimalendu Jha and Sushmita Sen Gupta. Sushmita, let me start with you. 3 words to sum up India's groundwater depletion. 3 words, go.
Groundwater depletion needs a plan in place at wall footage, whether it's in rural area or in the urban area. We need a recharge plan.
All right, 3 words. All right, Vimalendu Jha, your turn. 3 words to wrap up this issue.
It's a classic example of mismanagement. That's word number 1. Incompetence. That's word number 2, and indifference is word number 3, and waking up is the final word, is the operative word for everyone.
All right, thank you to both of our guests, Vimalendu Jha as well as Sushmita Sengupta, on their viewpoints about India's groundwater issue. That does it for this section of the program on our South Asia focus. When we come back, an in-depth analysis on tonight's big world focus story, the terror attack in Manchester. We'll be right back.